let's talk a little bit about what's going on with abortion. You've just said earlier that you think Roe v. Wade is going to be overturned in June via this Tennessee case, which essentially bans abortion after 15 weeks and thereby, shattering the Roe v. Wade standard. But let's talk about what's happening in Texas, because the Supreme Court essentially, as far as I can tell, sort of has, like a passive voice, I guess, said it's okay to abridge a constitutional right. Abortion still remains a constitutional right. It is okay to abridge a constitutional right if it is only the state empowering the civil courts to do it. I mean, that's right. I mean, that characterization is correct, isn't it? It's basically saying, like, as long as the state's not doing it directly, as long as they're just simply setting up a law that where you can get sued to oblivion if you perform an abortion or help with an abortion or, located around an abortion. And now we're seeing this in Tennessee. We're seeing it in Idaho. I think there's one or two other states, maybe Kentucky. Is this going to open up an entirely new sort of like way of abridging rights in the Constitution or just in general?
Yeah, no, what happened with Texas and SB 8 is very frightening. So first of all, I mean, the Supreme Court hasn't yet written the rules Roe v. Wade is overruled, but like Roe v. Wade is effectively dead right now. Like a state could ban all abortions right now if it wanted to. So what happened in this case, it's called Whole Women's Health v. Jackson, so Texas wrote a law which said, like, we're banning all abortions after 6 weeks, but no one in the state government is allowed to enforce this law. Instead, we're appointing literally every person in the world as a bounty hunter. Like, someone in Nigeria could sue if they want to under this Texas law. And what the law says that if you suspect someone of performing an abortion before 6 weeks, you can sue them. If you win, if you prove that they performed an abortion, then you get a bounty of at least $10,000. And the at least is important. I mean, a court could say, okay, we're going to give you $1 million bounty or $1 billion. There's no upper limit on the bounty.
From the person they sue. So
exactly.
It's not like a government sponsored bounty. It is like it's an award essentially from the other from the defendant. Okay.
Yeah. So like if I'm suspected of performing an abortion that violates SB 8, someone sues me, and if they win, I have to pay the bounty. And the problem with this is, first of all, like there's no upper limit on the bounty. Second of all, there's no limit on how many people can sue. So if you're suspected of performing an abortion, you might be sued in, 20,000 people might sue you, hoping that they're going to get to collect the bounty. And the sheer, like, hiring enough lawyers to defend against 20,000 lawsuits, like, that's going to bankrupt you, regardless of whether or not you win them. Like, you could win every single one of them. It doesn't matter because you can't afford to litigate all these cases. So the fear of just having to being hauled into court and having all these legal fees has terrorized Texas abortion clinics into compliance with this unconstitutional law, because they are afraid that if they do not comply with it, then then they're done. Then all their money has to go to the lawyers. So that's the theory behind this. And what the Supreme Court said in Whole Women's Health v. Jackson is basically that's fine. What they said is that if a state uses this kind of bounty hunter structure, you're not allowed to go to federal court and sue to get a court order blocking the law in its entirety. The only thing you're allowed to do is wait until you're sued And then after you are sued, you can then, in the court that you were sued in, raise the defense, well, I think this lawsuit shouldn't go forward because the law is unconstitutional. But again, even if you win on that argument, even if all state courts agree with you that the law is unconstitutional, you could still be hit with 20,000 lawsuits, have to hire an army of lawyers, and then you have to shut down your clinic because all of your money has gone to legal fees.
If I was to say, like, okay, I'm a billionaire and I'm going to buy this clinic and I'm going to test this law and I'm going to fend off all these things and I'll have these lawyers and I win in one of those cases. In other words, I defend myself.
Yes.
Does that then provide the opportunity for the Supreme Court to address this methodology? Or is it just like you just happen to win in that case?
Yeah, I mean, well, the Supreme Court could, what would potentially happen is that, you get sued in the state court, you litigate, it gets up to the U.S. Supreme Court. Theoretically, it's not going to happen because the U.S. Supreme Court is probably going to overrule Roe v. Wade, but theoretically, the U.S. Supreme Court could then strike the law down. But so what? You're still you could still be sued again under the law. If you have a U.S. Supreme Court opinion saying that the law is unconstitutional, you can raise that as a defense. So after
in the state court, but it doesn't eliminate, they haven't found that the law is unconstitutional, just the product of the law.
Exactly. Yeah. The law is still on the books. So people will still be able to sue you under that law. You're still going to have to pay to hire a lawyer. And that lawyer will then file a brief. Yeah.
I'm just so don't they perceive this could be, we've opened up a Pandora's box here, because it's not going to stop with abortion.
Yes.
I mean, why would it? I mean, why couldn't I do this with the First Amendment? Why couldn't I do? Because if you don't have to even prove any damages, right? I mean, what are the damages that Sam Seder, have if a woman in Texas gets an abortion? There's no possible damage there. How do I get an award for that? So, I mean, this seems to be just chaos.
Yeah. And I mean, really surprised me that the decision came down the way it did at the U.S. Supreme Court, because there was a brief filed by a bunch of gun groups. And what they said was look, if you let this law stand, California is actually already considering a law like this. Some blue state is going to pass a law saying that anyone who owns a gun can be sued by a bounty hunter. And every gun owner is suddenly going to be in danger of having these bounty hunters come after them. And you can't run a country that way. I mean, what happens if Florida decides to pass a law saying that anyone who criticizes Governor DeSantis can be sued by some bounty hunter? There has to be a way to stop that, or you don't have a constitution.
I mean, I don't want my kids to be taught by a straight person. And it doesn't, if there's no sort of damages associated with this, if there's no, that's the other part about the, aside from it being an end run around, a way to avoid the federal courts, it also seems to be setting a new structure for tort actions.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there's no damages here. I don't understand how this is. The $10,000 is completely, and like you say, it can go upwards, but I mean, it's a completely random number. It seems just that they have blessed slap suits, which were just lawsuits as a way of if I have more resources, I go after you. And just to change your behavior in some way.
Yeah. I mean, what bothers me is that the court is letting the policy outcome that they want drive the ship here. If the court, I get it. They hate Roe v. Wade. They hate abortion. There is a procedurally proper way to overrule Roe v. Wade. There's a procedurally proper way to do it quickly. What they could have done in the Texas SB 8 case is, instead of make up this loophole that essentially swallows up the entire Constitution, they could have said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We are ordering the parties to brief the question of whether or not Roe v. Wade should be overruled.
Right.
We're going to decide this case on an expedited basis. And then 3 days later, we're going to release an opinion saying, yes, Roe v. Wade is overruled. Now, I wouldn't have liked that outcome. Like, I think that would be bad because I support abortion rights. But that is procedurally normal. Like, the Supreme Court is allowed to take briefing on whether to overrule an opinion. It's allowed to overrule its own opinions. It would not threaten to swallow up literally every other constitutional right. And it doesn't put the justices in this untenable position. Like, someone is going to pass that you could sue any gun owner law eventually.
Right. I hope so.
And there's no way the Supreme Court's going to let that law stand. Like right. They will come up with some reason to strike that law down. And again, like, why do you make yourself look like?
It feels like they are just trying to create facts on the ground and that make it a fait accompli on some level that they're going to repeal. Like you said, effectively speaking, Roe v. Wade is dead. And that's sort of like the effective part of it. It's effectively dead, allows them to sort of like lead from behind. Then they can go back in and clean that stuff up if they want, because it becomes no longer necessary to have those civil procedures.